Well, it's wonderful to be here. So I'm Dr. David Beers. I'm the host of the Good Medicine podcast, and I usually am sitting in a studio that we have just a few miles north of here. But it's exciting to be here at Brigham Young University and to meet with the students here. It's one of the things that brings me a lot of joy in my life to interact with young people and people that are interested in the things that I'm interested in. I have a passion for science. I love what I do. I wake up every morning thinking about what I could discover today and what breakthroughs that we could have that we could discover. So I want to talk a little bit about my background and what I've learned since I was a student here. I was an undergraduate here many years ago. The campus looked a little bit different than it looks now. There's a couple buildings that I used to take classes in that don't exist anymore. There was one right out there that got knocked down that spent a lot of time in. But how things have changed and what I think the future looks like for all of you guys moving forward. I know most of you are probably looking at careers in biotechnology and medicine, and that's why you're here. And I think that there's a lot of interesting things happening today that are really going to shape the changes that are happening in the future that you guys are going to live through and be part of. And I think, for me, that's always exciting. I think a lot of people are afraid of change and afraid of things changing. But for me, I just see any change as a new opportunity to do things differently and to explore new ideas. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what I see happening, and then we're going to open it up and answer questions. So if you guys have burning questions that you want to ask me, I'll answer anything. So hopefully these guys filter some of them, but I'm happy to answer any question that you guys have of me for me. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself and my experience. So I started out as a chemistry major here. When my father is a chemist, and so I grew up being exposed to science from very early age. I always went to my dad's lab. He worked in industry. He started out in the paper industry, working at a big paper company called Crown Zellerbach, and he actually invented some new processes for making paper products. And I remember some of my actually earliest memories in life are walking into his laboratory, and chemistry labs especially have a certain smell associated with them. And you got, even walking into a chemistry lab today, I have that deja vu of thinking back to the early days with my dad. And then my dad got recruited to an interesting place. He joined Hewlett-Packard. And Hewlett-Packard at the time was known for making calculators and scientific equipment, and they had just decided that they wanted to make personal computers. And they thought, well, if we have personal computers, I wonder if people would like to print things. And since my dad was an expert in paper, they hired him to build their first printer. So my dad invented the inkjet printer for Hewlett-Packard. So you guys that all buy those little cartridges, that's my dad's fault, how expensive those things are. But I actually worked in his lab making ink when I was a teenager, testing the first inkjet printers. And I went to college back, some of your professors that are in here are about my age and can remember that when we went to college, nobody had a computer and certainly nobody had a printer, and I had both. So I was kind of popular in the dorm that people would come, and my printer was not like everybody else's that had this. We call them daisy wheel printers. They were essentially a typewriter that turned into a printer, but mine was this nice quiet inkjet that sprayed ink onto a piece of paper, and people thought it was magic, right? They loved that. So anyway, I always liked chemistry because of my dad, and so when I came here, I immediately went to the chemistry department. I kind of had a funny experience with my first experience in doing research. I felt like I wanted to do research as an undergraduate, and that's one of the great things about Brigham Young University is many of you probably work in labs and have experience in doing research, and that's not common across the country. It's actually kind of unique to have as many undergraduates working in labs as they do here at BYU. It's one of the special things about Brigham Young University. And it even back in my day, a long time ago, that was something that we had access to. And so I called my dad and I said, well, who do you know in the chemistry department? And he said, well, read down the list of professors. So I started reading the list, and he's like, oh, that guy. I helped tutor that guy when he was taking PChem, and he would have failed without me. So you go in and tell him that your dad helped him pass physical chemistry and that he should give you a job. And I think my dad was joking, but I literally did that. I walked in to the professor and said, hey, I'm Jim Beers' son, and he said he tutored you in physical chemistry and you would have failed without him, and you should give me a job. And he just started laughing. He said, yeah, sure, come on. And I actually worked in the exact same lab that my dad worked in when he got his PhD. So that was a lot of fun. And that just kind of strengthened my interest in science and got me excited. I was able to publish a paper as an undergraduate, presented some national meetings, and that just fueled my fire to want to be more involved in science. I had the good fortune of taking some biology classes and decided biology is much more interesting than chemistry for me. And so I went to graduate school and studied cell biology. And I had an amazing experience as a graduate student, something that none of you guys can do. So I actually was involved in discovering a gene, and since we've sequenced the whole genome, you guys can't do that anymore. But back in the day, this was well before the Human Genome Project was done. We discovered a gene called histone deacetylase, and I spent months sequencing by hand that cDNA and then the genomic DNA for histone deacetylase. So that was a lot of fun to be involved in discovering something that turned out to actually be really important in a lot of diseases, including cancer. In fact, there are multiple drugs approved that are inhibitors of histone deacetylase. And so that kind of got me interested in the more translational part of science to say, I can make discoveries that can actually really help people. And so instead of just thinking about what papers I can publish and what grants I could get and what research I could do in my lab, I started thinking more and more about how do I make discoveries that can translate into helping real people. And that's another part of my motivation in life, is I had people close to me. My grandfather and my mother both died of colon cancer very young. And I think one of the things that motivates me every day to continue to do what I do is thinking about, I can make a discovery that can help somebody else's mom and grandfather and grandmother stay around a little longer. And so that's really what I care about. And as was mentioned earlier, I've had the great fortune of transitioning from the lab into the clinic many drugs. I think I'm on 18 now. I think they said 16, but I just took number 17 and 18 into people, and I'm working on 19 and 20. So I should hit the 20th drug that I've taken from discovery into the clinic probably in the middle of next year. So that's been a lot of fun, and it really is motivating to me. It took me 25 years to get the first 20 drugs, and I hope that I have 25 years left. And my goal is to get 100 drugs into people. So that's what I'm motivated by, and why I do what I do is I feel like just playing the odds. If I put enough things into people, I can save a few people's lives. And it's been amazing to work on projects that actually I've met people and have had people close to me that have actually taken drugs that I was involved in discovering and working on. And that's just one of those things that just kind of blows your mind to say, my goodness, this is not an abstract thing. These are real people, and maybe the mothers and fathers and grandfathers aren't that far away. They might be people really close to you. And so it's been an amazing career for me. People ask me all the time about, well, how did you end up being able to do what you do? And it was not a direct path. It was not something I planned. But what I did is I tried to walk through every door that was open for me. So when I was a graduate student and we were involved in discovering this gene, we got a lot of attention for that. And so I was able to attend some big conferences and met some great scientists, and was offered to do a postdoctoral fellowship with a really famous cancer researcher. And that really changed a lot of things in my life. And one of the things that I tell young people all the time is, it's so important to find good mentors in your life, people that can help you guide through all the choices that you have, and can give you good advice, and people that have actually done it and been there and seen things. And he's been an amazing mentor for me. I talk to him at least once a week still. He's in his early 80s and still going strong. He just got a 5-year grant, so I guess he's going to be around for at least 5 more years, still doing research. But he's been an amazing person to work with. He's a clinician scientist, so he's an MD, but he's done almost 500 phase 1 clinical trials. So he's the doctor everybody goes to when you have a brand new drug that you want to test in people. He's the physician that says, I'm happy to give this to the person for the first time. And he has just some amazing stories. He's been doing it for 50 years. And back in 50 years ago, cancer drugs weren't very kind. They were literal poisons. And he has just incredible stories where he injects people for the first time and they just die like that. So he's seen it all. He's experienced so many things, and it's just been amazing to learn at his feet, to learn what he's seen and what he's experienced. And I couldn't have done what I've done without him. And so I guess that's my first take home to you guys is, if you want to be successful in life, I think one of the things that's important thing is to find people that have done what you want to do, and find a good mentor that can help you figure out what the right choices are to make to get you to where you want to go. And the other thing, I think, like I said, is sometimes the path to get to where you want to go isn't straight, and you might go this way and that way, but I think that know that opportunities, when they open, you've got to take advantage of those opportunities. And I tell everybody, the thing that I learned in my life pretty early on, and I was lucky, is that fear is not a motivator in my life. So most people make decisions a lot of people make decisions because they're afraid. They look at it and say, well, all the bad things that could happen if I do this. I actually don't ever think that way. I never think about the bad things. I only think about, well, what positive things could come of this. And so I don't let fear inform my decisions. And people say, well, man, that's got to be scary. It's like, that's not the motivator for me. And I've been in situations where I've started companies and things didn't go right, and we basically lost almost everything. And I guess I kind of have that, I forget what they call it, but when you've experienced like a near-death experience, it kind of emboldens you to kind of take risks, because you're just like, didn't kill me, so I'm okay. And I kind of feel that way sometimes, that people are like, wow, you're crazy, like you risk everything. It's like, yeah, whatever. And I've been blessed to have a good partner by my side. My wife, who's actually here, has always just said, I support you 100%. If you think this is the right thing to do, then let's do it together. And so having somebody by your side that is, believes in you and trusts you and says, sure, yeah, sell the house and cars and, and start this company, I mean, that's her. It's incredible. She never's complained one time, and it's been really, really one of the most important things to me is having a partner that has been 100% supportive of even crazy stuff that I probably shouldn't have done. But she's never said, no, that's crazy, don't do that. So anyway, I've been really blessed to be able to experience all these things, and I feel like part of my mission right now is, I'm starting to get a little older. I'm still young. I still got plenty of life ahead of me, but I want to make sure that there's somebody that's going to come behind me when I am ready to be done, that I can hand the baton to, just like my mentor kind of did with me. And so part of the reason why I'm excited about interacting with people like you guys is, I want to find people that have the same kind of desire and passion as me, that I can hand the baton to when I'm ready and say, hey, go for it. I can help you figure out how to navigate this. So I guess maybe that's a good transition to open up to some questions, because I'd love to hear what you guys are interested in, and what some of the things that you'd be interested in knowing about the future, and I'll talk a little bit in the question and answer about kind of how I see where medicine's going, but I think let's just open it up and start answering some questions.
All right, let's do it. BioHive is a nonprofit building, branding, and bringing together Utah's fast-growing life science ecosystem. Get involved today. BioHive's Women in Technology and Science community hosts events for anyone and everyone wanting to support women in life science STEM. And BioHive's Health Tech Hub community hosts events for those operating at the intersection of health and technology. Register for events and see what's buzzing at biohive.com.
Everybody, a quick round of applause for Dr. Beers.
Thanks.
I mean, almost 20 medicines into patients, into people. That's phenomenal. And I know a handful of people in the crowd here, and I can speak for all of us when I say that this is the kind of work that all of us students are really aspiring to kind of emulate. And so I'm really excited to hear some really, really cool questions from the crowd. Up on the screen is a QR code where you guys can submit your questions. They'll show up here on my nifty tablet, and from there we'll ask your questions. But while we have those questions coming in, I wanted to ask kind of a first primer question.
Sure.
To kind of get us started here. Like you said, working in academia, right, at BYU is really interesting because a lot of us have the opportunity to be in research labs where we get to have experiences that maybe students usually don't get until they're into graduate programs or beyond. And so we have this experience working in academia, but when we're talking about translational research, working in industry, it's a different environment entirely. And I think that I speak for a lot of us here when I ask, I'd love to know what kind of surprised you about that setting as opposed to working in research and academia?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And for me, I never thought of myself as ever wanting to be an entrepreneur and starting a company. I mean, that was never on my radar. I don't think I ever entered any of those buildings over on the other side of campus. I don't even know the names of those buildings for where the business people hang out. So I never took any of those kind of classes. I did everything I could just to stay, every class that I could take that was a science-focused class. So I had no idea what it was like to be in anything other than an academic setting. It was where my training was. It's where my school, my life. I spent all the time in the lab. And so what actually motivated me to start my first company was that we had discovered two drugs, two compounds that we thought could be drugs, that we were working on in the lab, and we had done a bunch of animal work and showed that they were active in certain kinds of cancer. And I went to my boss, my mentor. He was the cancer center director. I was a professor at the University of Arizona, my first faculty job. And I asked him, I said, well, what's the next step? Like, how do I take this from where we are and get this into people? Because I want to see if this actually really works in real people. And he said, well, that's the hard part, right? Is that there's no grants that you can write that actually will fund this. And so really you're going to have to find either a partner to work with that will license this from the university, will take this technology and put money and effort behind it. And he's like, but that's hard. It's hard to find people. And he said, to be honest, you're pretty much the only person that believes in this, right? Like you're the only one that really thinks that this has a chance. And so if you really want to see it move forward, you're probably the best person to do it. And I said, well, I don't know how to do that. And he's like, well, I'll help you. He had been involved in some entrepreneurial things. And so I obviously had some mentoring there. I think the first thing that I decided was I didn't know anything about starting a company. I had a vague idea of what a share in a company or stock was in a company. I didn't know anything about how do you do that? How do you value that stuff? So that side of things surprised me a lot. Like how companies are structured, who owns what, and how you raise money to actually get money to do the research that you want to do, and it's incredibly hard. And I've probably given, I don't even know, thousands of pitches to venture capitalists, to family offices, and just high net worth people, friends, family members, people walking down the street, asking them for if they would be willing to invest in companies. And it's very uncomfortable. Like it's really hard to say, here's all this research that I did and I really believe in it. Will you give me $1 million? Like how do you ask somebody for that? And that was really hard. It was hard to get over just the idea of asking people for money, and that was a challenge. Obviously when you have success, it becomes easier because, I have my very first company out of the gate, we had somebody commit to put $10 million in the company. I was like, wow, that was easy. And what I found out is never that easy. So that commitment actually fell through. And we had already started the company and started hiring people. And that's when, I went to my wife and said, we've got to pay these people, and maybe we need to sell our house and our car. And we did that, and just so that everybody could have a paycheck. And we were on the verge of losing everything. I was like, there's nothing left to sell. I'm not selling my kids, but I sold everything else that I could sell. And somebody called me and said, I'd pitched to hundreds of people and said, you should invest in this. This is a good opportunity. If this works, it's going to be really successful. And one of the people that I pitched to called me and said, I want you to come to the office. And he said, I don't know why I'm doing this, but here you go. Handed me an actual check for $1 million. Handed it to me. And I was just like,
just like that?
Yeah, just like that.
Oh my goodness.
Just incredible. And the great part of that story is 18 months later, I handed him a check back for $8 million. So he invested $1 million, and I returned him back a lot more. So that's another fun part about what you do is having people trust in you, and you actually be able to return that trust back.
Yeah, it's got to feel pretty good.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It does kind of, to me at least, sounds like a little bit of a scary process. Yeah. And we've gotten a couple of questions here.
Okay, great.
To read one right off, kind of on the topic of mentorship.
Yeah.
I think a lot of students are looking for that kind of mentorship to take their research to the next level, or even just to be involved in research. What do you recommend when it comes to finding a good mentor, or to really just find anybody who can believe in you and work with you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I got lucky. I didn't know a good formula of how to do it. I actually was at a conference presenting, and this might be a good example that if you have an opportunity to do something like that, to go present a poster or an oral presentation at a meeting, you're going to attract attention from other people, and that's a great opportunity to actually find people that can help you, right? That if they're interested enough to come and spend some time to walk through your research with you, it's an opportunity to say, hey, I'd love to follow up and work with you, and that's how I actually found the best mentor in my life, was through that kind of relationship. But I think that part of it is just I think most successful people are actually they like people that take initiative. I love it when people come and say, hey, I want to learn from you. Because I don't really have time. I don't go seek that out and say, hey, I'm going to be your mentor. But if people will take the initiative and come to me and say, hey, I'm going to bug you until you help me, then I actually kind of like that. So it's like that person actually has some gumption and has, they obviously, it's a scary thing to walk up to somebody that you don't know that's obviously a busy person and say, I want you to be my mentor and help me. But that actually just taking that step. And you might have 10 people tell you no, but you only need one person to tell you yes to make a difference in your life, right? So that's how you have to think about it, I think.
Yeah, just some persistence.
Yeah.
I can kind of echo that a little bit. I mean, I've been involved in research here on campus for quite a while, but I don't think, I think the first time I tried to get involved, I had to knock on the professor's door 8 or 9 times before he would listen to me. So a little bit of persistence really goes a long way.
It really does.
That stays true all the way to the very top. So that's awesome to hear. Kind of transitioning a little bit to the future.
Yeah.
I think it's no surprise when people think about the future of medicine, something that comes up a lot is AI.
Yeah.
And this is a question that we've been getting on the screen here.
Yeah.
So where do you see that fitting into the future? I know that's a broad question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's funny, I look back in my life and when I started in graduate school, there was no internet. There was no, I got an email when I was a graduate student, like later on, not the first year as a graduate student. It was the first time I had an email address, didn't even know what email was, right? I mean, it was a brand new thing. The internet was just brand new. And so I lived through watching how that changed everything. And it changed everything. Like it changed how we do everything in our lives. And I thought that was going to be the defining thing in my life, was watching the internet revolution and how we went through that and how that changed our lives. And we're at the very beginning of another one of those. And it's kind of like surprises me that I've lived through that, and then now I'm watching the beginnings of another revolution. And it clearly is going to change everything. And I know there's always a lot of hype and a lot of, people overplay things and people overstate things, but I can tell you definitively, artificial intelligence is here to stay, and it will change the way we do a lot of things. So the way I see it changing medicine is that I think about one of the first applications of AI was actually playing chess, right? I mean, that was one of the first things people did, was teach an AI algorithm how to play chess. What's interesting is the best AIs can beat every human chess player. But if you put a human chess player with an AI, it can beat an AI by itself. So that's kind of interesting to think about. And I think that's how I think about medicine, is a doctor enabled with AI is going to be better than AI by itself. And that's how the future is going to, you're going to be an enabled physician if you're going to be practicing medicine, that AI is going to shape how you do everything. But it's not going to replace you. It's going to complement what you do. And so from a practical perspective from medicine, that's going to be important. But in terms of how we develop medicines and how we run clinical trials and how we identify people that are at risk, it's going to change everything. What we're doing right now, and this is what I'm excited. Well, in fact, I have several things that I'm working on that have AI associated with it. But we made a discovery, actually, with some professors here at the University of BYU, that what we're doing is trying to do the opposite that we've always done for discovering new drugs, which is, instead of studying people that get sick, we want to study the people that stay healthy, even though they had genetic risk to be, so people that had risk that they should have gotten sick and they don't get sick. And that's a really interesting thing to think about, because every genetic risk that we know of, it's not 100%, you're not 100% fated to actually have whatever that risk is. So if you have risk for colon cancer or breast cancer, no gene that we know of has 100% chance. None of them are 100% penetrant. Some of them are 99%, really close, right? Cystic fibrosis is almost everybody that has that mutation actually ends up with the disease. But even that, there's still some people that are resilient to that genetic risk. And what's interesting is figuring out why people stay healthy. I think that's the future of medicine, because we cannot afford to keep doing what we've been doing, which is waiting for people to get sick and treating sick people. Our population is changing dramatically. For the first time in the history of the world, there are more people over 65 than there are under 5 years old. And that's just going to get worse. And by 2050, there will be more people over 65 than under 65 on this planet, if we keep going the direction that we're going, which means we have to change the way that we develop and administer medicines, because we can't wait for people to get sick, because we have to keep people healthy, because we can't afford to let a bunch of old people spend millions of dollars in their care, because we don't have enough young people to actually support that to happen. So it's going to change, and we think AI is actually going to usher that whole revolution in. And so what we're doing right now is training an artificial intelligence algorithm to look for patterns of resilience in genomic data to say, okay, here's people that had genetic risk and got sick, and here's people that had genetic risk and didn't get sick. What's different about those two populations of people? And then the cool thing about that is nature is actually telling us what the answer is. It's not us guessing, because right now we kind of guess about things. We study disease and we say, what's different about the disease than a healthy cell? And we, like for cancer, we look at that and say, there's 1,000 things different about the cancer cell than there are the healthy cell. What's the right one that we can target with a drug that will fix that? And the answer is, there's no right one, right? I mean, it's so much messed up by the time it becomes a disease state. It's very uncommon that we have a silver bullet that can fix something like that. We have some examples where that happens. But the reality is, the best way to treat disease is not to get the disease, right? The best treatment of cancer is don't get cancer, right? I mean, and that sounds funny, but it's actually possible for us to actually uncover the pathways in biology that prevents people from getting disease.
Yeah, and like you said, these new tools are the things
Yep.
that are kind of enabling us to do that.
Yeah.
When you talked before, you said that this has happened before, right? When we were moving to even electronics and kind of email, like you said, for the first time, right? Or even, hundreds of years of, I don't know my history, maybe hundreds of years ago, when we're moving from the plow to the tractor, right?
Yeah.
And so, kind of moving from the proverbial plow to the proverbial tractor, us in science want to know how to drive the tractor. We want to know how to use the new tools.
Yeah.
Talking to students briefly, what would you recommend to kind of enable us to be valuable in the field of science with these new tools? Because I imagine it's probably not, at the desk learning how to write the tools or
Right.
code the things. How do we make ourselves useful
How do you
with
apply
AI?
them? Yeah. I think that's great. That's a great question. And what I see is that people generally use these new tools to incrementally improve what they're already doing. But what I would recommend is try to do things that you can't do without those tools, right? So don't think about how can I make this 10% better or 20% better by applying this algorithm, but ask, how do I do something that I can't do today, right? Something that's impossible, because that's where the breakthroughs happen. It's, incrementally improving an existing process isn't that exciting, to be honest. Like using AI to make something 10% better, I'm not sure that that's going to change the world. Like, it's not going to change it very quickly, at least. But if you really want to make an impact, find a problem that you can't solve with the current tools and see how you can apply to say, hey, here's an unsolvable problem. And Dave Thompson sitting here right here, he and I have been working on something people have said, an unsolvable enzyme, the very complicated enzyme. And we used some computational AI-assisted tools to say, can we drug this enzyme in a different way that we can actually only affect one isoform, not the other 10 isoforms of this particular enzyme. That's the kind of stuff that I think is exciting. And so really it's challenging yourself to say, can I use this tool to answer a question that I can't answer with Google or with just doing an internet search or using the existing tools, but can I use this to do something that I can't do today? And that's where the big breakthroughs are going to happen. And I think that's where, when you start thinking about what is artificial intelligence really good at, and what are we bad at as people, we can look for associations between two things, right? That's our minds can wrap we can wrap our heads around that. I can look at it and say, here's a population and here's another population. What's one thing that's different about them? But if I look at it and say, if there's 5 things that need to be, these 5 things make a difference between this population, that's hard for a human to actually. But AI, that's right up its alley, looking for that pattern recognition. So those are the kind of things I would challenge that when you're thinking about applying these tools to scientific research, ask the question, how does this help me answer a question that I can't answer with today's technology or with an experiment that I can run?
What if you could get rewarded just for being healthier? Meet Galvin, the company using the latest blockchain technology to reward you for taking care of yourself. They help with your mind, body, and soul like a personalized health assistant to track your progress and help you feel better. Galvin's G Plus app rewards you for exercise and assesses your mental health in under a minute using AI and over 2,500 voice biomarkers. If you're feeling off, G Plus gives you personalized power-ups, science-backed techniques to help you feel better fast. And here's the best part. When you prioritize your wellness, you earn crypto. Ready to level up your health? Use promo code GOODMED20 at checkout for 20% off. Download G Plus today at the Apple app or Google Play Store and start your wellness journey with Galvin.
Okay, I love it. That's super good to hear, because I know, I've had lots of conversations with my fellow students about how to be, the most equipped with AI to make myself useful in a really kind of dynamic and changing field. So it's good to hear that there are some strategies and some bigger questions that we can kind of be answering. Kind of moving forward here, AI is of course going to help us translate a lot of really cool science into a lot of really kind of life-changing, life-saving medicine, but there are still going to be barriers. And so a question that we've been asked is, what is the biggest barrier in your mind, to turning scientific discoveries into real patient treatments?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the challenge is, as you look at the process of translating a scientific discovery into something that can, a therapy that can benefit people, every step along the process is hard. Every single step. And people ask me all the time, well, what's the hardest thing? It's all hard. There's nothing.
No breaks.
But every single step is hard in its own way. But we've become so complicated, and we kind of become a victim of our own success. Like in the old days, once again, I'm old enough that when I first started working in drug discovery, there was maybe one drug for breast cancer, and today there's hundreds. And so the problem of getting a new drug approved, back then I had to beat one drug. Now I have to beat 100 drugs. I have to show my drug is different than those other 100 drugs that are out there. And so we become a victim of our own success. As we develop therapies for diseases, it makes it harder to get the next therapy approved. And so what we tend to try to do is to stratify that disease, where the early drugs got everybody with breast cancer, and the new drugs are breast cancer with this particular feature or this particular molecular marker or mutation. And so we tend to kind of narrow things down to say, I can't get a drug. And by the way, it would be very, very challenging to get a drug approved for all breast cancers, because we know all breast cancers aren't the same, for one, and it's very hard to imagine one drug would work for every subtype of breast cancer. But we also know that there's a bunch of other therapies, and the way our regulatory process works is we have to show that we have an advancement over existing things in order for it to be approved. So if I go head to head with a drug that exists, I have to be better than that in some way. And so for me, that's probably, when it comes down to it, the challenge. We're less than 10% successful of drugs that enter the clinic. So the reason why I want to get 100 in is that I should be able to, by statistics, maybe have 10 drugs that actually work, because 90 of them are going to fail, which is really, really hard. I mean, that's the tough part about what we do, is almost everything doesn't work. And it's hard because we just don't have great models to predict what happens in people. And animals, we use them a lot. They're not really good. Like a little mouse doesn't do a good job at predicting what happens to a person. And we spend a lot of time testing things in mice, and it doesn't. It in fact more often doesn't translate into people than it does. So those are some of the barriers that we have, and we're trying to fix all of that as well, right? I mean, there should be ways of building new models using new technologies and applying AI to train. Here's what we've tried in the past, and here's what worked and didn't work. Is there a better way to actually predict what happens, what can actually work in people? And we're doing that kind of stuff as well.
Super, super cool. And this is something that a lot of students at least don't really think about when we kind of think about working in industry and actually taking our research, the stuff that we're really passionate about, and kind of translating it into something that can really help people. And there's a kind of as a trend, there are lots of things that maybe us students don't really kind of comprehend about what it really means to take something into the world. One question that we've gotten asked here kind of has to do a little bit with scientific communication. Yeah. I think you're probably a very rare breed in that you seem to be a phenomenal scientist and a phenomenal communicator. And lots of times the two don't cross over too well. Yeah. So when we live in a time like we do today, when there's a lot of confusion and maybe some distrust about science and medicine, what would you recommend to the students of tomorrow to help us to be better communicators?
No, that's a really good question. And it isn't something, and I think that obviously I told you kind of the way that I was as a student. I just spent a lot of time in the lab. Like every chance I had, I was in the lab, and that's probably not the best way to actually figure out how to be socially communicate in a social setting and interact with people. But one of the things that I think I was encouraged to do is early on to present and to convince people that what I was working on is important. And that's a skill that you need to develop if you want to be a good scientist. It's hard to get people to appreciate the importance of things that you're working on, and especially today, there's just so much stuff out there. I think when I started, I mean, there was no internet, and so we got journals, scientific journals mailed to us, or we went to the library and read the paper. And today I can see everything on the internet, and there's probably 10,000 more journals than there were, maybe even more than that, than there were back when I was a student. And so it is a challenge, because it's easy to get lost in in that sea of stuff that's out there. And how do you figure out how can you stand out, and how can you have people pay attention to what you're doing? And I think it's something that you really do have to learn. And it's one of the things that I think mentors can do, is you find people that you want to emulate and say, how does that person communicate in a way that gets people excited about what they're doing? Because I'll tell you, I go to scientific conferences, and there's some times that I'm feeling like I'm falling asleep. Like, listen to some of these guys. I mean, they're reading every word on their slide. It's like, I can read the slide. Like, I don't need you to read it. But being able to communicate something in a way that gets people excited about what you're doing and is convincing, it just takes a lot of practice. And as I mentioned, I went through the fire, right? I mean, I got thrown in the furnace. The hardest thing you can do is get people to part with their money, right? I mean, that's really hard, to get people to write a check. And so I had to learn how to present something in a way that got people excited and got people to be convinced to say, wow, this guy actually knows what he's talking about, and actually, I'm happy to write him a check. So part of that, I think, came from that experience. And it's hard to replace that, right? I mean, that's hard for me to teach to somebody, because I had to learn it by getting beat up a bunch, right? Because I can't tell you how many times I got told, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I mean, that hurts, right? Because, as a scientist, these are your ideas. Like, this came out of my head. I think this is, the most important thing in the world, and have somebody say, that's the dumbest thing I ever. And I've had people tell me that. That's totally dumb. That will never work. It's like, you might as well just kick me and throw me out that's how you feel. But then, you learn from it and say, well, next time I got to figure out how to present this in a different way, so I don't get that reaction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's definitely good to know that it's not just me who has a hard time with getting my ideas across to other people.
Yeah.
But I think, maybe if I can just highlight one point here. It sounds like we talked about at the beginning, some persistence is super, super key. You said almost 20 medicines into patients, but people have told you at times that your ideas are silly and goofy, but here you are, right? And so persistence really, really matters. With the remainder of our time here, I kind of want to move to kind of maybe a more personal note. We have a lot of younger people here, and I think in a kind of tumultuous time and in a tumultuous field, sometimes there's a lot of doubt, is this the thing for me? Is research, is medicine the thing that I really want to do? And so one of our participants is curious to hear, was there a moment when you just knew that this is that everything was going to pay off, that this is what you were meant to do? What did that feel like, if that happened at all?
Yeah, no, it's, I look back, there were, life is a roller coaster, and there's always ups and downs, right? There's times where I'm just like, why did I do this? This is this was a mistake. I could have done other things. But I've learned that you just can't get too low and you can't get too high. When things go really well, you can't just say, oh, life is going to be roses, because the roller coaster, it's going to go down again, and you don't want to get too down at the bottom either. And so, thinking about how can I stay on an even keel, and as long as the slope of my life is going in this direction, I'm happy. But there are moments, and I think it's important for you to celebrate things and to recognize moments that are real breakthroughs. And I remember, when I was sequencing this gene for the first time, and I'm late at night in the lab reading DNA sequence, and I kind of got finished with the cDNA sequence, and I was like, I know something nobody else in the world knows. I know something that literally no one, I've seen something now that nobody else has ever seen. And just to think about that, like to me, I can't think of something cooler than that. It's like, if I got to spend my life doing something, discovering things that nobody else has ever seen before. To me, that's what hooked me on, hey, I could do this, right? I could turn this into something that that would bring me a lot of satisfaction, that I could peel back those layers of biology and say, I know something now that nobody else knows. And that's kind of a fun thing. And, to experience that many times. And, just the other day we have a drug that just went into people. And when you get the first data back to say, the drug got absorbed and didn't hurt the person. And, those are just amazing times. Like we get that data and we look at it and say, oh my gosh, it worked. It's like the drug got, it actually got absorbed and it went to where it was supposed to go and it moved the biology and it didn't kill the person. That was all great. So those types of things, I think celebrating those little wins, because, what we do, getting a drug approved takes years and years of time. So you kind of have to think about how you break that up to give yourself the encouragement to say, hey, I am making progress and I'm making a difference, because it's really hard and it can get very depressing to say, nothing I'm doing is working. And the other thing that I've learned is I always work on more than one thing, because projects are also a roller coaster. There are times when nothing works, and then there's times where everything works. And if you just have one project, you're riding that roller coaster. But if I'm working on three things, then maybe when one's down, one's up, right? And so that's kind of helped me to learn how to multitask and work on multiple things. It's helped me kind of smooth out some of those bumps to say, that thing's not working, but this thing's working. And so I can keep that motivation going.
Before we close out, I want to turn the time over back to you for one more little item.
Sure.
Is there anything that you want to kind of leave with us? Closing remarks? Any thesis statements or takeaways before we're done with our show tonight?
Yeah, no, I think that the one thing, and I think you mentioned a couple times that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and there always has been uncertainty, and there always will be uncertainty. And you can talk yourself into a situation where the future looks bleak and things look bad. But I have to tell you that I have more hope for the future than I've ever had. I really do believe that we can change the world, and that the world has the opportunity to be a much better place by things that we work on. And one of the things that I'm real excited about is trying to make a difference in people's health around the world. We have a lot of health disparities. Depending on where you live, your zip code can determine in large extent what the outcome, how long you live and what types of diseases you're going to have. And that's kind of crazy to think about in our world today, that it matters whether you live 100 miles from here or you live here, and what type of health care you're going to get access to. And those are problems that are actually fixable, right? And so I look at that and say, with all the stuff that's out there, all the noise, there are actually things that we can do to democratize healthcare, to give people access to things they don't have access to, that are actually fairly straightforward problems to fix and are fixable and could really change the world. And I think a lot of the core issues that are problems in the world go back to lack of access to opportunity, and a lot of countries around the world, a lot of people around the world are held back because of they have poor access to healthcare. And so I believe the things that we do can fundamentally bring peace to the world, can bring health to the world, because I think if we make people healthier, it will make people safer and more peaceful. And I have a lot of hope for the future. I think these are not insurmountable problems. These are fixable problems. And I spend a lot of time traveling around the world. I actually spend more time outside of our country than the last month. I've not been in the United States. I've been all over the place, and I just feel a lot of hope that we can make a big difference in this world. And so I think part of what I would recommend to everybody is, don't let yourself get too inside of your own head, and spend time looking at ways that you can bless and serve other people's lives, because it's the key to keeping yourself motivated and hopeful and looking to the future and thinking, hey, I can make a difference. And I know it's so hard, because when you're trying and working in a competitive field, it's hard not to stay inside your head. It's, you have the tendency to say, I'm just going to put my head down and study as hard as I can, and the next 4 years I just got to get through this, and then I'll worry about that in the future. Guys, don't get into that. Don't get into that mode. You don't have to study 24/7. tell I think your professors would all tell you that's actually not the best thing for you. It's not the best thing to be the best student that you can be. Don't spend your whole life inside your own head. Spend time trying to figure out how you can bless and lift up others. And I think you're going to find yourself being happier and being more hopeful for the future.
Well, thank you so much.
And I think that's good medicine.
that is good medicine. Everybody, thank you so much for coming out. Dr. Beers, thanks so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. Big thank you on behalf of BYU and BioHive.
That's it for today's episode of Good Medicine. Thanks for joining us as we explore the science and stories behind health, medicine, and innovation. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a great zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please click, follow, and leave a review for the podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you have questions or comments for me, please put them in the comments section on YouTube or reach out on all social media platforms at Good Medicine. Links are in the description. The best way to support the podcast is to check out the sponsors of the show. You can do this by looking at the links in the show notes. That's it for today. I'm Dr. David Beers, and we'll see you next time.